So I'm just going to let you guys know, we're probably going to be revisiting this maybe tomorrow. Hopefully we already have a verdict and Kyle gets acquitted of literally everything. And thankfully you can see here by the first article that we have pulled up, one of the charges. So now he only has 5 against him. Okay, so obviously we'll just run it down here real quick because most of the stuff as of right now when we're recording, right now as I'm recording this, okay, the rebuttal from the prosecution is going on by Jim Krause, who just looks like he's fat lock, okay? ADA lunchbox is what Jack Posobiec's calling him, which is kind of funny in and of itself. No, we're just getting a side profile of his fat head, and he looks like he's just yelling at the jury because Mark Richards, okay, a spoiler, the motherfucker really showed up for closing arguments. Nobody saw that coming, but you could kind of surmise it because he's always been presented as a facts-based attorney, so he was just taking notes during Binger's closing arguments, and then he just ran it down and was absolutely cerebral when it came to the closing arguments. He did a fantastic job, way above expectations. But let's get the jury instructions out of the way because it was the first 2 hours of the day, and yeah, like I said, maybe tomorrow we'll go back over the closing arguments when I have an opportunity to just go back and re-listen to all that stuff because YouTube was being a motherfucker and then yeeting streams, okay? So they took down Law and Crime for a significant amount of time on YouTube, and then they also took down Nick Rekieta's stream, which was at 77,000 fucking people at like 10:30 local time for me. And they could have crested 100,000. They ended up, okay, right just before I was going to initially start recording, but it's like, okay, well, we're about halfway through the fucking defense's closing arguments. We need to finish this out at least a little bit, and plus my computer's acting fucking retarded and it won't boot up properly, so I was working on that at the same time, listening to the defense's closing arguments, so we got a couple of little stories on that as well. So yeah, we're just going to give you guys an overview, so again, we'll just go ahead and force it right back on that. And yeah, YouTube was taking down streams and then coming back later and saying, oh, don't worry, it was an accident. And meanwhile, you know, like CBS, PBS, ABC, NBC, all of their streams were still up, but not Law and Crime, not the biggest fucking stream that has been covering every single day of the trial, which has been up to, if not surpassing, the single largest streams and sometimes dwarfing all of the mainstream media coverage, Nick Rekieta's stream. No, it's just funny how that shit works, and then just fucking yeeting 30,000 people off of the coverage at the time, because like I said, it got up to 77,000, and then by the time everything got stabilized afterwards, yeah, they were right around 50, and then they started to climb up, and still, he ended up cresting 80,000, and great on him. He's been doing a tremendous fucking job covering all of this stuff. So that was YouTube to begin with, and then it just kind of made it rocky goings for a while, but ended up catching most of it anyways. But all of the jury instructions, all 2+ ish hours of that boring shit ended up getting properly covered. Long and short of it is, if they find on any of the 5 charges that do remain within the context of those specific charges themselves, if they find any sort of self-defense being properly applied in the context of that charge, basically fucking yeet it off, okay? So if they find it, and then a lot of the charges themselves, like the homicides, this is what the prosecution is alleging that Kyle Rittenhouse did. The homicides of Joseph Rosenbaum, Anthony Huber, okay, the attempted homicide of Gage Grosskreutz, okay, the reckless discharge of against Richie McGinnis, even though he fucking testified to say, it's like, no, you know what, hey, maybe that's a little bit sus. Okay, obviously paraphrasing, but yeah, a lot of the people didn't really feel like Kyle posed any of the problems that were there. It was mostly, you know, the riot that was around there that was more of a concern at the time. But with that said, and then also, yeah, firing against, I forget the proper terminology or the proper charge when it comes to Jump Kick Man, which kind of should probably lead you in a certain direction. There's a reason he's called Jump Kick Man, because he jumped and kicked Kyle in the face and drove his head into the concrete. I think he has a reasonable application for self-defense on that one. Just going to go ahead and throw that out there. But again, the jury, once they do, in fact, eventually get the case in their hands, just have to find a reasonable doubt. And I think all of the video evidence that is there is going to lead you down that path, which, you know what? Hey, I'm still thinking there's going to be maybe a mistrial, okay, or maybe some acquittals, but getting rid of this minor in possession charge. This is the one where, oh, he was taking the gun, he illegally possessed the gun that night. And it's like, guess not, because there are a few different exceptions that the prosecution needed to overcome in order to properly pursue this charge. They just couldn't do it, okay? Under the age of 18, you're not allowed to have a gun, okay? Apparently, that's the law in Wisconsin. Read into it what you will, but there are several exceptions on that one as well. 16 or 17 years old. It's like, oh, okay, well, Kyle was 17 years old at the time. Oh, a little bit hard to wrangle around that one. And then there's okay, for the purposes of hunting. It's like, well, okay, he was hunting a pedophile and a domestic abuser that night, unbeknownst to him. Okay, maybe. Okay, loose application, probably not, though. We'll just go ahead and fire that one off. And then there was another one that was there, which was a really big detail that was getting hung up on Friday, okay? And that was all about the overall length, the barrel length of the gun itself. It needed to be 24, 26 inches in total length, and that's just your standard long rifle, okay? Your 30-06s, your hunting rifles, your AR-15s, your semi-automatic firearms, okay? All of that stuff. If it is of the same specifications, that falls within the context of the exception, and then the charge wouldn't be properly applied to you. And that's what the judge ended up finding today. So here's where we're going to start with a little bit more structured. I gave you guys a little bit of the foreplay before everything got going. So Judge Bruce Schrader ruled in favor of the defense's request to have a firearms charge against Kyle Rittenhouse dismissed in Kenosha County Court on Monday morning. Again, yeah, he said this was on Friday. It's like, oh, I'll take it under consideration. It's like, no, we have the evidence. Okay, we have the firearm right here. Why don't we just go ahead and measure it and get this out of the way? But I guess it was one of those things that was batted about over the weekend, and then, yeah, today, this morning, before the I think even, yeah, it was definitely before the jury even came in. They just decided to, yeah, let's just get rid of it, mostly because the prosecution was like, yeah, we know the gun doesn't fit the proper specifications, but just don't press us on that. And it's like, oh, okay, so you guys were going to go ahead and you were going to try to pin this charge on Kyle Rittenhouse, even though you knew it wouldn't stick. You fucking greasy motherfuckers. But that was merely the tip of the proverbial iceberg that was their closing argument. On Friday's Breitbart News reported, Judge Schrader appeared skeptical of the weapons charge, saying that the Wisconsin statute was unclear about exceptions for those over 16 years old but under 18 years old, and if the gun were a long-barreled rifle. Yeah, those are two of the three different exceptions that were on there. However, the judge did not throw out the charge, partly because he cannot remember whether the length of the rifle Rittenhouse had used had been introduced into evidence. Yeah, okay, there was a lot of things that weren't introduced into evidence, and then that little detail right there is going to come big into the prosecution's closing arguments, okay? On Mondays, lawyers of the prosecution and the defense argued over the final draft of the jury instructions. The defense again raised the issue of the weapons charge, as they should, because you have those big charges, okay? You have those big overarching, like, murder charges, attempted murder charges. Those are big ones, but all of those have self-defense, okay? And then if you had this minor in possession charge, that one, you know what, it could have been a compromising charge, and then Kyle just would have got slapped with that and maybe one of the lesser includeds. But thanks to cleaning up all of these jury instructions, which was big fucking wins first thing this morning. But again, getting that self-defense, a little addendum on all of those charges really, you know what, could have pushed a couple of those charges over the edges. And it's like, oh, reckless discharge. It's like, well, if he was properly trying to defend himself and all of those rounds did end up hitting their intended target, could we just get rid of that? And it's like, well, it didn't want to go that far. So you know what, it was almost a win. There were a couple little victories there. It was kind of like a last second field goal. all things considered. Yeah, the defense again raised the issue of the weapons charge, noting the gun had been measured in court, and the police detectives on the witness stand had confirmed that it was not short-barreled, ergo their expertise on the subject. This should be taken into proper context. That's what led to the charge being dismissed, which is great, which is really great. Just have that minor little detail of the 5 other egregious charges. But the prosecution ended up, like, after a couple of hours and literally everybody fucking falling asleep on the subject, the prosecution got into their final closing arguments. And like I said, yeah, the rebuttal's going on right now, and it looks like it's starting off to be a complete and utter dumpster fire. But that wasn't how the prosecution started, okay? They started out pretty strongly, okay? They had the opportunity to mischaracterize all of the testimony that Kyle Rittenhouse provided. And again, like I was saying, and like many other smarter people on the subject were saying, don't put Kyle Rittenhouse on the stand. And most of those charges, okay? And then all of the stuff when it comes to provocation, that was all because of Kyle Rittenhouse's testimony when he was on the stand. Oh, well, you pointed your gun at somebody, ergo, you prompted them, and then you had to shoot them because you're just a bloodthirsty killer who just likes to play video games a lot. I don't know. After Kyle expertly did shoot that down, not the only thing that he shot down. On the stand, that, Binger's absurd argument that somehow Call of Duty needs to be drug into this, he's never brought that up again. Mostly because, okay, he's an arrogant, this is Binger, by the way, he's an arrogant motherfucker, but he does learn every once in a while. He just doesn't learn how to read a courtroom, because I feel like it was just going, his closing argument, was going on and on and on, because he got an hour before lunch, and then he came back and he just fucking verbally vomited all over everybody for the next 2 hours, and it was too much. He lost the plot. Everything was fine for the first 45 minutes or an hour, okay? When he first took the stand to say, hey, okay, this is what Kyle was doing. He was running around. He was killing motherfuckers. He was making a very compelling argument for that, okay? He was saying he was out there provoking people and then just trying to take retribution, and he was defending buildings, and, oh yeah, you're not supposed to be able to do that, and then you had to force, or that you had to provide adequate retreat, and then you had to properly alert Rosenbaum and Huber of your intention, and if anybody was going to go ahead and encroach on you any further, you were going to use deadly force after that. That's not exactly in the Wisconsin statute, but yeah, you do you, fucking Binger. Jesus, like, that dude was playing fast and loose with the law, and he was definitely, when it comes to properly characterizing people that were there rioting in Kenosha that night, yeah, prosecutors, like it says here, prosecutors in Rittenhouse case praises rioters. That crowd was full of heroes. There were a lot of head-scratching claims that were made. Like, also, I think when, yeah, it was right around, yeah, Rosenbaum, when Binger was circling back to that fucking inciting incident, because I think, at least when it comes to the prosecution, they believe that the Joseph Rosenbaum, well, he shot him 4 times, like, he could have stopped at any moment. All of those shots came within a fraction of a second of one another. He shot him once, and then he continued to lunge at him. 1, 2, 3. And an additional 3 for 4 total, okay? It doesn't even matter if it's a little manlet or not. When somebody says that if they get you alone and they're going to kill you, and the prosecution said, oh, well, we don't have that on tape. We literally have almost every minute of the entire evening on tape, and we can't find any evidence of that a threat being made from Rosenbaum to Rittenhouse. And it's like, well, you also have witness testimony saying that he's gonna gut anybody like a fish, or rip out their guts, or something retarded like that. And also the other eyewitness testimony to the fact that, yeah, Rittenhouse was also making claims that night and making threats as well, and that, as Binger somehow pointed out expertly, I guess, he was setting things on fire, causing a lot of destruction, but he was shorter than Rittenhouse, therefore he can't be somebody to be taken seriously. All right, that's a weird argument to make. But they literally don't have the law or the facts on their side. All they have is a blurry image, which Richards kind of destroyed, and it was weird. The prosecution didn't really rely on that image that they fought so hard for in their closing arguments. I just found that a little bit weird. But yeah, like it says here, that crowd was full of heroes. Prosecutor Thomas Binger praised a mob of Black Lives Matter rioters. To be fair, there was also Antifa in there, but I need not be redundant, who chased Kyle Rittenhouse through the streets of Kenosha, Wisconsin last August 25th. That crowd was right, and that crowd was full of heroes, he said in his closing argument. I must have missed that one. But he was also saying, yeah, at Rosenbaum, well, that Kyle Rittenhouse didn't have to shoot directly at Joseph Rosenbaum. He could have fired warning shots in the air. What? And then also, the Binger, if you think that that's not enough, okay, fire off illegal warning shots, which, again, you were also previously, in the couple of weeks past, you were also saying, oh yeah, Kyle was just recklessly firing off his gun. There were homes in the background, but his entire closing statements were just completely incongruent with statements that he previously would have made minutes before. Oh, you can't use deadly force to protect private property. And then a few minutes later, oh, well, if you would have just stayed and protected the private property, none of this stuff would have happened. Wait, what? It's like, okay. And yeah, we're going to have to gestate on this for a little while because there was a lot of things said and a lot of words were spewed out there. And yeah, we'll probably have to run this back the next day. But prosecutor Thomas Binger made the unusual argument on Monday in a Kenosha, Wisconsin courtroom that the mob had the right to chase Kyle Rittenhouse after he shot Joseph Rosenbaum. Why? And that he had no right to defend himself against them. Yeah, because apparently, once again, just the shifting goalposts of this. Okay, Joseph Rosenbaum was unarmed, even though he had a chain earlier, and then he also had that, at the time, nobody would have known what the fuck he was throwing at Kyle. It was his plastic bag that he just had all of his shit in when he got out of the loony bin. He was throwing that at Kyle, and then you remember also earlier in the night he said that he was going to kill him in more colorful language at least twice earlier that night. Chasing after him. Oh, well, he slowed down once he got to those cars. And it's like, yeah, he didn't want to run into him, okay? He was trying to lose Rosenbaum by going through the cars themselves. But then also finding out, because cars are pretty sturdy and Kyle might be a swimmer, okay? He might be a lifeguard or something, but I don't think his hurdling over fucking burned out sedans is all that impressive. So instead of bouncing off of those, he turned around and then tried to stop the subject, and he was successful in doing that. But yeah, back to this. Though all three of the alleged victims were chasing Rittenhouse at the time, Binger portrayed them as concerned citizens trying to stop an active shooter. Not an active shooter. Though he argued that Rittenhouse could not reasonably believe that the first man shot, convicted child rapist Joseph Rosenbaum, where's the lie, would actually disarm him. Oh, okay, Binger said that the crowd was justified trying to do so. Yeah, he made some kind of goofy fucking argument that was disproven by the evidence that, oh yeah, he tried to use some kind of goofy backhanded swat at the gun. Oh no, that the first shot definitely went through his hip, even though the medical examiner that was there that was testifying couldn't properly say if the shot through the hand. You know, the one that had all the stippling on it, and then it also had the soot that was properly marked out. The one that was at close range didn't say if that was the first shot or if the one in the hip was the first shot. But yeah, you know, little things like evidentiary proof, you don't have to refer back to that. Fuck that. But yeah, no, also, yeah, Rosenbaum, if he was reaching for the gun, he would have been armed if he was successful. But thankfully, Kyle took care of that problem before it, would have, at that point, probably would have turned into an active shooter situation. Yeah, we'll just try to streamline this because I'm just looking at the timer right now and holy fuck, there's just so much information here and Binger's just such a fucking sleazeball. He argued that Rittenhouse was to blame for choosing to flee Rosenbaum into a group of parked cars rather than an open field. Yeah, because he was just going to magically snap his fingers and create an open field, I guess, whatever. And said that Rittenhouse callously ignored Rosenbaum's plight as he fled the crowd after the first shooting, okay? Binger argued that Rittenhouse did nothing to demonstrate to the crowd that he isn't a threat to kill again, other than, wearing his AR-15 all night long, not shooting anybody until, of course, he was getting chased or had his head attempted to be caved in by skateboard or had a pistol pulled on him. Just little things like that. But yeah, no, because he wasn't running around saying, I have a gun, but I'm not going to shoot you. Apparently that's the only acceptable statement of intent. Whatever. Saying he could have, oh yeah, that he should have fired warning shots. He literally said that. Therefore, he said the actions of the mob of rioters who chased them were entirely reasonable. He added that the crowd was right to stop another shooting, and that their right to chase Rittenhouse supposedly to stop him. Yeah. And then also, in one of his closing lines, Binger's, this was, Kyle no longer had the right of self-defense, even though Gage Grosskreutz pointed a loaded gun at him. He still didn't have the right to shoot him. All right. It was not very good. It started off all right, and then it just went, here, we're going to take a break, and then came back, and then just went completely downhill from there. But yeah, the prosecutor, Kyle Rittenhouse, provoked entire incident of fatal shootings. Okay. They say a prosecutor, but it's Binger. Okay, in the murder trial of Kyle Rittenhouse on Monday accused the teen of provoking the entire incident that led to the shooting of 3 people during riots and unrest in Kenosha, Wisconsin last year. Kenosha County Assistant District Attorney, words are hard, Thomas Binger during closing arguments said the jury should ignore Rittenhouse's defense claim that he was attacked and fired his weapon, injuring 1 and killing 2, thankfully. Binger said that Rittenhouse initiated the encounter by brandishing his gun, one of the many wild claims he made over the course of nearly 3 hours. The AR-15 style rifle is what provokes this entire incident because big scary black gun, ergo you need to wrestle it away from the kid who was also out there administering medical care to anybody who needed it, regardless of political or violent affiliations. But no. The Binger trivialized that as well, and then held up the equally armed Gage Grosskreutz, who didn't help anybody out on the night and was just really looking for a fight. But whatever. If you are the one who is threatening others, you lose the right to self-defense, the prosecutors added. Apparently for the entire night, right? Like, even, okay, he totally did act in self-defense when it comes to Rosenbaum, but the way the Binger was trying to put this across is, okay, if he wasn't using self-defense in the Rosenbaum situation because he wasn't armed and he was a fucking manlet, it's like, okay, for the rest of the night, no self-defense. Okay, he had no right to do any of that stuff, even though he got brained by a skateboard and he had a gun pulled on him. Totally, nope, 100%, absolutely not. He didn't have any self-defense in those situations. Rittenhouse's lawyers, in response, highlighted considerable video evidence and the law and everything else. And Richards was great, but again, we got a little bit more when it comes to the prosecution because they were fucking just Binger was off his rocker. I don't know what the hell he was doing. He was just grasping at straws mentally. Okay, like he had the little victory on Friday, but I guess he must have blotted that out like a handsy uncle, mostly because there was no jury there. Okay, and there was a lot less coverage on the trial itself, so I guess he forgot a lot of that because he spent most of that little motion hearing on his phone because he's a total fame whore. Prosecutors argue for vigilante action against Kyle Rittenhouse. Mob had the right to chase him. Yeah, that's just highlighting one of the many claims of that absurd closing statement. It was way too long, kind of like this video is going to end up being. It was rambly. I know. Pot, kettle, black, whatever. And I'm very interested, and I just couldn't put it off any longer cutting these videos. I can't wait to see Krause's meltdown when it comes to a rebuttal, because the defense, and Mark Richards finally fucking showed up. He came in like a house of fire, and for a shade under 2 hours, he ran down the witness list and he told you everything that you've seen from them, and then just really highlighted what a dumpster fire, not the one that Kyle helped put out, but what a dumpster fire the witness list for the prosecution really was, and how much great evidence the state provided Kyle Rittenhouse, because in turn, the best evidence that the state got came from Kyle Rittenhouse. Still stand by that assertion that putting him on the stand ended up doing way more harm, and maybe they just should have rested their case in chief right after the prosecution was done, because that's probably about as good as the defense got, and they wouldn't have ever had this provocation charge, which that was one of the first things that Richard said. You know what? Members of the jury, if you guys remember his opening statements, you realize he didn't say provocation not even once, alright? You didn't hear anything in his opening statement about it because his case absolutely sucked, okay? And then he just had to invent this with his magical hocus pocus, out of focus picture and video, which is an actual line that came out of his defense, his closing statements rather, and it was really good. It was really fucking good and comprehensive. And yeah, when you're talking for like 2 hours at a time, obviously you're gonna have a couple of ebbs and flows, but for the most part, it was solid all the way through, if not really good at some points. And yeah, we'll have to go back over probably this part and probably the rebuttal tomorrow, which I'll be super happy for. Or maybe we'll just get a total acquittal verdict, and that would be wonderful. A defense lawyer, Mark Richards, on Monday said during closing arguments in the Kyle Rittenhouse homicide trial that his client feared for his life. And I think that was adequately displayed multiple times before the shooting that left 2 dead and 1 injured in the during the riot in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Let's be accurate. Prosecutor Thomas Binger is lying and misrepresenting the evidence. Yeah, these were a couple of the first things that Richard said when he told them that Rittenhouse provoked the violence on August 25th, 2020. Richard said, "What's more, Rittenhouse was trying to leave the scene of violent protests and riots when Joseph Rosenbaum, who was shot and killed during the incident, and other individuals chased him." Did you hear one word out of Mr. Banger's mouth about provocation? You didn't. But when his case explodes in his face, he comes out with provocation. Yeah, thanks to a magic video that just happened to show up at the prosecutor's office. Fucking weird how that happens. He continued to say, "We don't play fast and loose with the facts," before asserting that Rosenbaum was a bad man. He was a rioter, and he was also a child rapist, but I can't say that in court because it wasn't introduced into evidence. And my client had to deal with him alone. That's for true. Rosenbaum was leaping and lunging at the defendant before trying to grab Mr. Rittenhouse's AR-15 style rifle. Adequate, absolutely perfect characterization of that, because he was leaping and lunging towards his firearm, trying to take it, and then become armed himself, obviously. Richards argued, speaking to the jury, he said, physical evidence does not lie, and then he asked members to use your common sense and judgment. Again, these are very, very early, very, very late-breaking articles, so hence the boilerplate language. Witnesses who testified in the trial saw rioters breaking blocks of concrete into smaller pieces to throw and smash property, Richards said, adding that Rosenbaum, meanwhile, was described by Rittenhouse as belligerent and filled with malintent. A lot of the witnesses attested to that as well, so let's not pretend that that was a Rittenhouse exclusive. In contrast, Richard said the Rittenhouse was there to help during nights of rioting, arson, and looting. Yeah. He was actually out there treating wounds, unlike Rosenbaum, who was out there just trying to find his next victim. Before Rittenhouse shot Anthony Huber strikes him in the head, and he was trying to take his head off. Yeah, with a skateboard. Okay, twice he hit him in the head. If you don't think that you can kill somebody with a skateboard, I'm sorry. Apparently, you have been hit in the head with a skateboard. And Richards called out the jury to disregard erroneous media reporting on Rittenhouse, including unfounded claims that he is a white supremacist. Yeah, actually, and we're going to go ahead and detour a little bit because the White House condemns vigilante as Kyle Rittenhouse trial wraps up. Yeah, and then also wouldn't backpedal on any of their white supremacy claims. But yeah, that's another reason why we're going to have to revisit this tomorrow, because I'd imagine the media is probably losing their mind right now because they're seeing their wafer thin prosecution. You remember the down with the states and we need to hashtag resist everything. Now they just want the government to put the boot on the kid's proverbial neck. It's just weird how these people have, no logical consistency whatsoever. I guess that's not weird. It's just completely in their DNA. And Richards called on the jury to disregard erroneous media reporting. Members of the Rittenhouse family, including his mother, have publicly decried reporting of her trial and her son, leading some analysts to speculate that the teen could file a defamation lawsuit if he's not found guilty. Yeah, and in fact, Alan Dershowitz is also making the same claim, but he's not saying, Kyle Rittenhouse's mom is like, we're going to go after Biden. It's like, don't do that. He has fucking immunity from pretty much anything. But yeah, Dershowitz is saying that, yeah, just sue the media outlets who are purposely mischaracterizing over and over and over again. Like, what was it? Keith Olbermann, who was saying, oh yeah, Kyle Rittenhouse discharged his rifle and he literally shot 60 rounds into the air all willy-nilly and killed like multiple people. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. You know the facts, but you're probably still out there. Your fingers are probably on fire because you're tweeting so much. But yeah, we'll just go ahead and wrap up the defense side of this. Earlier, Binger said in closing arguments, the jury should ignore Rittenhouse's his self-defense claim that he was attacked and fired his weapon, injuring one and killing two. Rittenhouse initiated the encounter by brandishing his gun. He asserted the AR-15 style rifle is what provokes the entire incident. Really isn't. Earlier in the day, Bruce Schrader dismissed the misdemeanor weapons charge against the teen. Yeah, noting that it fit the different descriptions in order to meet the exceptions on the charges themselves. But yeah, the rest of the defense, like I said, running down the witness list, just saying, yeah, the prosecution brought him up there for one purpose, but just like in the case of Gage Grosskreutz, he was supposed to be their star witness, but then at the end of the day, he also admitted that Kyle didn't fire upon him until he reached around with his own gun and then tried to kill him. Richards was great. Richards was on point, and it was about 2 hours of really spectacular closing. Okay, so it's going to be really interesting, and yeah, going back and running this back after sit on it for a day. We'll see what happens, but I hope if this is going to be a short deliberation, that could go one of two ways, but the longer this gets drug out, the longer there's an opportunity for a mistrial. And then if it's a mistrial from the court, that means that we could be looking at this entire situation over and over again. So if we get something by the end of the week, that should bode well for Kyle. And I really, really fucking hope so. With that said, guys, I thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.